Being Watched While Watching Falling Stars by u/Aurora Hiora. This happened a few years ago. That was a time in late August where there was a high chance of seeing falling stars. So, me and some of my friends, we were 18 years old at that time, decided to go out one night and watch. In the end, it was only 4 of us. Nicole borrowed her father's car. It was one of those that has a big open backspace, the type that can be used to deliver furniture and such. So we can sit out on the open backspace and watch the sky from there. Pat ordered pizzas and brought some wine and cola with her. She's the type who likes to chill like that. And the 4th person is Flower, who I consider the hero of this story. So we decided to go out on a field next to the city with a car because we can see the stars better if there are no streetlights. Apart from the dirt road, there were a lot of bushes around, so we were happy we didn't have to sit on the ground in the dark. When we were sitting out there, one of us noticed that we can hear some faint music in the distance. At that time, there was a lot of small city festivals where people played live music, so we didn't care about it. It was around 11 p.m. We ate some pizza and drank some wine. Of course, Nicole only drank cola, she was the driver. And at this point, we spent about 2 hours out there. Pat was getting a little tipsy and we were a little loud, laughing and enjoying our summer. I remember Pat was telling one of her jokes and we were all laughing when I glanced over to Flower. And in the faint light of her phone, I saw that she wasn't laughing. She seemed bothered by something. "What's wrong, Flower?" I asked her while the other 2 was still giggling. "Nothing. It's just, doesn't this music sound like a recording to you?" This was the point where we all froze and stayed quiet. And she was right. The music we heard before that we forgot about within the 2 hours we spent there sounded like a recording. We could hear it because it sounded closer. "Doesn't it sound like it's getting closer?" whispered Nicole, and it did get more and more louder. This was the point where we decided to get out of there. We didn't even climb down from the car's back area to get in the car. Nicole just jumped down and ran to the door, and she started the car within seconds. This time, the music became very loud as we drove off, and we saw 3 men running out from the bushes. One of them had a phone glowing. We assumed that it's where the music came from. As we reached the side of the city, Nicole stopped, and we jumped off and got into the car. After that, she took us all home. We didn't talk much about it, and I think we all felt foolish about the situation. Till this very day, I am grateful that Flower has sensitive hearing, and Nicole acted so quickly. As for the 3 men, we don't know who they were and why they were hiding in the bushes for hours, and why they were playing music in the middle of nowhere. Why didn't they come out sooner if they wanted something? That's what I was always interested in. Then an idea hit me, and it's giving me chills. In the safety of thinking we were alone, we were speaking loudly on the field, and we mentioned that we are sad that the others couldn't come, and we also mentioned the wine sometimes. What if these men were just waiting for us to get drunk? Possible Human Traffickers Scouting Victims by u/Scatterbrains. I'm a male and 19, and this encounter happened to me and my 2 friends a while back. We'll call them Mitchell and Tatum. It was around 9:45 at night, and it was really dark, and we were walking to Tatum's apartment, which is only about 8 blocks away. We walked on the dark side of the street since it was quicker. The other end of the street, which Mitchell lived on, had streetlights. As we turned the corner to walk, we saw 3 cars parked in front of each other against the curb next to a house. I'm still unsure if there were people in those other cars. Mitchell had said he could have sworn he heard someone yelling someone's name in one of those cars, which I maybe heard. I can't remember for sure. The car in the front had its lights on, and a man, maybe in his mid-20s, was standing in front of the car talking on his phone. He saw us, and he started talking significantly louder than before, as if he wanted us to hear him. Red flags are going off in my head. I don't remember what he said, but Mitchell later stated that it sounded like he was talking in code. Something along the lines of, "She had a great time," or "having a good time." I really don't remember. Anyway, we walk a bit further down the sidewalk, and I'm not trying to look back, which I ended up doing a few times. We turn our heads to see another guy sitting in complete darkness in the alley ahead. The only reason we saw him is because he was lighting a crack pipe. That's odd, I thought. I've never seen this many people in close range of each other at night, and I mean ever. As we walked further to the end of the street, the apartment complex being on the corner, there was a man and a woman huddling together, just standing there, talking. They were across the street from us. We eventually turned the corner and rushed into the complex, where we theorized what had happened. Before we even got into the apartment itself, we heard a popping sound, which wasn't too far away. Mitchell said it sounded like a gunshot from what could have been the same area we came from. Mitchell said that the middle car could have been blocking someone in to nab them, which could make sense, but I still don't know. When my mom picked me up, they were gone, the cars and everyone. The other people we saw seemed way out of place because there's usually nobody out there beside us. And I feel it could have been a human trafficking scheme, which is scary as hell to imagine. Does anyone have any theories on this? If so, feel free to share them below. I would really want to hear your feedback. Hi, I would like to tell you of an encounter that resulted in a serious amount of fear and pain. A full, paralyzing fear where you just sink into yourself while your body shakes because you are so scared. As for pain, I would not feel any physical pain until the end of this event, but can speak on a different pain. A distinct feeling that presents itself before the floodgates of pain flow in. I found myself on a seesaw of fear, not wanting to climb higher, but to get off altogether. But higher and higher I went, fear looking up at me with a smile, as it propels me to experience fears that I've never thought that I would experience. Fear of getting arrested, fear of getting robbed, fear of dying, and lastly, fear I may have to kill someone. To start, I am what you would call a sex addict. Now, I know identifying yourself as a sex addict comes off a bit silly, but after years of serious reflection and confrontation with traumatic events in my life, I feel as if the explanation fits my compulsions. It is not so much the act of sex that I crave. The reason that I identify myself as a sex addict is because at some point in my life, I replaced the search for emotional affection to feel fulfillment and happiness with the need for physical encounters. That hit of dopamine was all I needed. It is as if my ability to trust has completely been eradicated, and the common traits that so many look for in relationships are unnecessary to me to be happy. Instead, I can just hook up with someone. No emotions, no insecurities, no pressure. All the things that can hurt me and make me vulnerable are gone. The only comparison I can make is to a drug addict. The drug is enough. That short high temporarily gives you all that you need without having to face any emotions, whether it be your past, present, or future. You can physically impose something to make you feel good. It is quite the oxymoron in that, while the world views you as out of control, what drives my drug is the sense of control. However, what scares me about my sexual compulsions is what I am willing to do to get that physical encounter that I crave. I have never had a type, which certainly helps, and without sounding like an asshole, I do rather well with the ladies. I'm not bad looking, educated, have my own house, and respect women. I need to make that point clear because I don't want any readers to think that my urge for physical relationships drive me to insanity, that I violate women. Absolutely not. My angle is the intelligent, nice guy. I don't have all the confidence in the world and certainly will not approach anyone, but I can hold a conversation and can be charming. Something I am ashamed of, as I believe I can be a true wolf in sheep's clothing. Most women believe they've met a guy who is committed and wants monogamy and love. I cowardly admit that I rarely come out and let women know my true intentions. While my success rate is fair, it is still not the easiest thing to just randomly go out and pick a woman up for sex. Sure, I have done it, but mostly every time was the 1 out of 1,000,000 times I actually wasn't looking to bring someone home. My go-to was Tinder because honestly, it worked really well for me. I am a talker, and Tinder allows for conversations to start without having to confront all of the other insecurities men and women face while trying to approach a stranger at a bar or somewhere random. However, the night I speak of, I wasn't getting any hits. I first started my night by going out. I had a few beers and looked for women to talk to, but the bars were empty and those there did not look like they wanted to be approached. Again, my game is not to bother you. I can take a hint, and if you're out with the ladies and want nothing to do with men, I surely won't get in your way. While at the bar, I am also checking Tinder to see if anyone has replied to my dumb ice-breaking jokes or responses reflective to their profiles. And I wasn't receiving any responses. Then a thought that I am not proud of pops into my head, and I will admit it wouldn't be the first time that I have thought about it. I thought, maybe I should go pick up a prostitute. Town next to where I live has an insane amount of drug use, and poor souls who have the evil that is addiction often resort to desperate measures to secure money for their next fix. I hope you would believe me that when addressing my thought process, you must consider what my own addiction is and what it does to that thought process. I am sympathetic to women and know for most, selling your body is like selling a piece of your soul. However, my urges cloud the mind and you just don't think the way you normally would. In the past, I have driven around and even let women approach my car, but never actually went through with it. I was always able to let reason and empathy in to convince me not to do it and just go home. However, on this night, I had a strong buzz and I smoked a joint when I got back to my car. I was already feeling good from a couple drinks, but after the joint, I fell into a trance. I would do it. Tonight is the night. If given the opportunity, I'm gonna pick up a prostitute. I drove around for a couple hours and easily saw 3 or 4 women who eagerly try to catch your eye as you drive past them, looking for a head nod or a quick flash of lights to signal you know the deal and want to go. Like the other nights, I couldn't bring myself to do it, partly because the women out were aggressively marching down the street. They look sad, agitated, in a hurry, dirty, and I was already nervous, and the image I was playing in my head on how this would all go down was not like this. Deep down, I know there was some shame and these women looked like they were going through it. So, just like some other nights, empathy and shame convinced me to go home. On my way, I was far from the Broadway strip where you will find what you are looking for. It was easily 3:30 a.m. and I was approaching a 4-way stop sign in a completely different town when I saw a young woman standing by the stop sign. This area is very different than a strip. On the strip, it's very busy and it's nearly impossible not to be seen. Here, it was dark and not a car in sight. She was wearing a club-style dress. She looked nothing like the other women I had seen. She was younger, looked close to my age, and was just standing there. I pulled up the stop sign not knowing if she was a hooker or not, and I tried to play it cool and casually look her way. She looked back at me, then turned her head. I took this as she was a woman just waiting for a ride or something, and started to drive away when I heard, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" I will admit, when I heard her speak, I was taken aback. In seconds, my heart went from a gentle beat to an aggressive quickening drum. I stopped in the middle of the 4-way and began to quiver. I grew cold and felt stiff as she approached my car. I looked in all directions, ready to floor it if I saw any headlights. Boom, boom, boom. My heart thumped hard as she couldn't have taken any longer to walk 10 feet. When she opened my door, I could see her better. She was really pretty, and in that moment I thought she wasn't a hooker, but a girl who just gets in random guys' cars. I know, stupid, but it was my thought at that time. I pulled off and tried to relax. My arms were still so stiff and my neck and shoulders were flexed to the point her first words to me were, "Are you okay?" I assured her I was, but I was actually losing it. I thought any second now that a cop is going to pull up and arrest me and I am going to end up in the paper or on some registry and my life is ruined. Any set of lights scared the shit out of me and I would shrink as I passed. I asked how her night was because I could not think of anything else to start off with. She told me she was waiting for a friend, but it is really cold outside, and when she saw me, she thought that I could give her a ride. Again, perhaps I was being dumb, but I believed her. I asked where she needed to go, and she told me it was back the way I came. She then said for the ride she would give me a blowjob. Admittedly, I was more relaxed once I knew the situation I was in. I still did not know what to say, so I just sat back and let her tell me where to go. My thought that this whole experience was actually easy and not weird quickly changed once I realized that this woman had some issues. She was talking a lot and about the most random stuff. She had a lisp and couldn't sit still. It was freaking me out and I wanted to ask her to sit still, but I was afraid of her reaction. She wasn't the still, calm woman I saw for a whole 10 seconds standing at the stop sign. I got a bad feeling in my gut, and she asked me if I had any drugs. I told her that I had half a joint and she could have it. She looked at me and got annoyed. She wanted heroin, not weed. I told her that I don't do that, and she interrupted and said that she could get us some. I refused and kept asking where I needed to bring her. She would point in random directions and say that I took the wrong turn, or she thought a street was actually another street. After realizing that I'm an idiot, I now have this lady in my car. I no longer wanted what I wanted when I picked her up. I told her that I wasn't interested in the blowjob. I would bring her to her destination if only she would tell me where it is. Anytime I hinted at dropping her off, she would tell me to pull over so she could do what she said she was going to do to me, but I would refuse and say I'm good. I kept asking, "Can I drop you off here?" To which she would reply, "No, baby, please, I am lost, but we'll find a way. Please, I am so good you won't regret it. Let's party. You can come in and we can do whatever you want. I will let you do whatever you want to do with me, and I wouldn't care." I would be lying if every time she dropped that reference, I didn't consider it. But her behavior was so weird that I would bring myself back to reality and refuse. I was growing impatient and pulled over. I asked her to get out of my car, but she refused. What the hell did I get myself into? I thought. Like, seriously, have any of you readers actually had to get someone out of your car, a stranger at that, in the middle of the night, and she was acting erratic and seemed one touch away from screaming and losing it? I didn't want to draw any attention to myself. We were in a neighborhood, and I knew if she screamed, someone would hear and call the cops. I also didn't want to drive far away because that just seemed like a bad idea. I thought this would be an easy transaction, but I was wrong and had an unstable woman reaching for my belt, ignoring all of my requests for her to leave my car. No, I told you I'm good. I just want you to get out of my car. She wouldn't respond. She just sat back and grunted, then half whined like a child and rolled her eyes before reaching for my pants again. I said no! Just please get out of my car. I will pay you to get out of my car. This got her attention and she asked how much. I told her $20 and she didn't have to do anything. Just get out. She sat there for a minute and said she would, but I needed to drop her off at her house. This was so frustrating. I desperately wanted this night to be over and was trying to patiently guide it to a close, avoiding anything crazier than the situation that I was already in. I agreed, and we pulled off in the direction we came. We were about 20 minutes from where I originally picked her up, and while driving, I was getting really scared. I hadn't prepared myself for this. I felt stuck and at the mercy to this woman in my car. While driving, I heard a lighter ignite, and when I looked over, I saw she was smoking a pipe, twirling it in a slow circle as the flame touched the glass tip. I freaked out and yelled, "What are you doing?" She just looked at me and let exhale a large amount of smoke. It is hard to describe what it tastes like, but it wasn't weed. Meth or heroin, perhaps. I really don't know. I immediately rolled down my windows and noticed that I was approaching the four-way stop sign where I picked her up. I pulled over into an apartment complex and told her to get the hell out of my car. She looked at me and said, hold on. I need to call my friend. I forgot what building he is in." I thought, no fucking way. I was not going to sit here and wait for a guy to come out and probably rob me. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get the fuck out of my car right fucking now. I was losing it. My heart was racing and I just didn't care anymore. I kept yelling louder and louder until I heard a loud thump sound near my ear on the left side. I jumped. I looked to my left and there was a man outside punching my window and pulling at my door handle. I let out a half scream and grunt as I was so scared and confused. I will admit, things are a bit fuzzy from here on. My adrenaline was through the roof and I only remember bits and pieces of what happened next. I remember looking over at the woman, and she was trying to unlock the passenger door, probably to let the guy in. I'm pretty sure she got it open, but I threw the car in reverse and hit the gas. Thank God there were no cars behind me because I was not looking as I reversed. I remember the woman trying to get out of the car, but I was picking up speed because by then, I had put it into drive and floored it out of the complex parking lot. It was like we both realized at the same time we were both still in the car. I was going about 45 to 50 miles per hour and slowing down at the rate of my brain was trying to figure out what the hell do I do next. That's when I heard it. A thud followed by a sort of tearing sound. I felt waves of pressure on my shoulder near my collarbone when I tilted my head and realized that the woman was stabbing me. I assumed it was a knife and thought, I am dead. I am fucking dead. I slammed on the brakes and reached for the knife. She was going nuts, screaming and punching at me. One of us must have hit the radio on, which connects to my phone. I was playing a song from a playlist. I had the volume up when I shut it off, so when it turned out it was blaring. I was listening to an 80s Essential playlist, and over the speakers blared Material Girl by Madonna. I completely stopped my car and sort of blacked out. I remember her screaming bloody murder and clawing at my face. I also remember finally getting a hold of her arms, but this made her thrust her body over the middle console and just shake and squirm. She was a lot stronger than I would have ever expected. A switch must have been flipped because I decided or realized I was fighting back. I gave this woman a clean 3-piece and it slowed her momentum down for a second before lunging at me again. I remember thinking, why are you fighting me? I would let her go, no problem. I wasn't trying to hurt her. The thought then crossed my mind. I may have to kill her. Because even though I wasn't feeling it, I know I had been stabbed and I was just waiting to feel a blade plunge into my chest or stomach. I grabbed her by the throat and started to squeeze, anger flowing from my face to my hands as I gripped her tighter. I was yelling, "You fucking bitch!" Thank the stars. I was brought out of the rage quickly because in a blink of an eye, I realized my anger and let up on my grip. She was cuffing. I was now trying to leave. I unlocked the door and watched her roll out of the car. I sped off with the door still open and raced home. I realized my heart was racing and I had tears running down my face. I pulled over halfway home and inspected myself. I went for my shoulder and to my surprise, I wasn't stabbed with a knife. I was cut, but barely. Looking on the seat, I realized she was stabbing me with a small screwdriver that I kept on the side of the door. My shoulder throbbed in pain, and I was bleeding from the punctures, but they were not serious. I also found her cell phone and crack pipe, and I threw both out of the window. I jumped in the shower and immediately went to bed, shaking the whole time. I was exhausted, and when I woke up, my entire shoulder was bruised and parts of my chest where she must have also hit me. I was ashamed for a few days and prayed that I didn't hurt her. I took full responsibility for that night, and I believe it was karma for attempting to take advantage of a sick person. Thankfully, I saw this woman again walking down the strip. No, I was not on the strip looking for anything, just passing through. I felt a huge sense of relief watching her walk down the road. She looked right at me and didn't even flinch. I am not saying she wouldn't have recognized me, but in that moment, she didn't. I can easily say that I would never do anything like that again, and for peace of mind, I have started seeing a therapist about any urges I feel. It was real embarrassing admitting certain things at first, but it got a lot easier and has helped me practice a stronger, more rational thought process when I desire sex. My dog scared off 4 men on our walk. By u/consideration cute 607. I'm a 30-year-old female, and I have a 31-kilogram German Shepherd, which is about 10 months. She's an absolute nightmare to walk during the day, as she hates other dogs, so I walk her anytime between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. She used to hate people, but I've managed to train it out of her 3 months back, and she will generally ignore people these days, as long as they wait to be allowed forward with a handshake from me. We live in a small village in the middle of nowhere, and our estate is on the edge of this village. Our usual route is up and out of the estate onto the main road, and then we follow that through the village and back. Usually, it takes about 30 to 45 minutes, depending if she's stopping to sniff every blade of grass. A couple of weeks ago, we went out for her walk a bit later than usual, so it's pitch black. We got onto the main road, and she sits whilst I check before we cross. I notice headlights in the distance, leading out of the village. The car was parked, which was strange, as there's nothing up there but fields and cattle. Callie had also clocked it. We crossed the road, but Callie was leaning around me to keep her eyes on it. I will mention that she doesn't like cars either, so I thought she was just prepping herself to chase it. We walked in the opposite direction, and she kept turning around to look at it every 2 minutes. But I then noticed that it had slowly driven up and was crawling behind us. I stopped to look, thinking that they might be lost and needing directions. This is when I noticed 4 men in the car staring at me and my dog. Enter creepy chills. The car sped up a little and then pulled to our side of the road and parked. Callie and I stopped, and I was about to cross onto the other side of the road when all 4 men got out of the car and looked at us. Callie lost her mind. She lunged as far as the lead would allow, growling, snarling, and barking. 2 men closest to us immediately got back in the car, and the other two paused until Callie started pulling on the lead, trying to get at them. One shakes his head and gets back in the car, and the other shortly follows, and the car speeds off. As soon as they're gone, Callie sits and looks up at me, tongue out and everything, like she hadn't just been rabid a moment earlier. Well, she got extra fish treats that night. I have no idea what might have happened had Callie not been the way she is. And I still walk her at night, safe in the knowledge that I have a 68-pound death machine with me. Creepy Encounter While Walking My Dog by U/Electronic Panda 6780. Often, I enjoy walking my dog at nighttime. This is due to the fact that my dog is harder to walk when people are around with their own dogs. So, we tend to walk around parks in the area when they've become somewhat secluded. I'm not a very big guy. I'm just 5'10" and very lanky, so I wouldn't call myself an intimidating figure. However, my 120-pound black boxer/lab named Loki could be somewhat considered threatening to most from what I hear. I figured his size would be used as a deterrent for anyone looking to cause nightly troubles. Well, I was dead wrong. On one specific night in the fall of 2016, I could recall of an encounter that reminds me of why I am so reluctant to walk around once daylight falls. This specific park is one that I have been to a couple times, and from what I remember, this park is usually secluded around 6:30 p.m. and later. Aside from a couple joggers or very few other dog walkers, not many people walk the same path that I take. I also like to put on my headphones and listen to music while I walk. But on this specific night, I chose not to wear them since my phone was on low battery and I wanted to preserve it as long as I could. Anyway, the walk was going as usual. Loki did his business, and we continued on our usual path. About midway on our walk, I realized that it had started to get really dark. Since he was done with his business, I decided to cut the walk somewhat short, and we took a shortcut that kind of led us off the path. This path had a bunch of trees surrounding the area, and there were still leaves on the branches. With that being said, I felt a weird feeling as if I was being watched. I have pretty bad anxiety sometimes, but since I knew the town was safe, I knew that nothing was going to happen. But still, I could not for the life of me shake off the feeling of being watched. I peered back to see if anyone had been following me out of anxiety, and every single time, no one was there. In fact, no one was anywhere. This whole shortcut was essentially secluded. Suddenly, Loki stopped walking and also looked back. I told him, "Loki, come on boy, we've gotta go." One thing I failed to mention was that Loki is a big coward. I noticed his tail was tucked between his legs, which is a telltale sign that a dog is afraid. I was also curious and a bit nervous, but I surely did not want to find out what he heard or noticed. I just wanted to get out ASAP. I pulled a little and he began to walk, but every now and then, I'd see him peer back. After maybe a minute or so of walking, he stopped again, and this time, he began to growl. Despite being a coward, Loki is a bark but no bite kind of dog. So I took this chance to see exactly what he was growling at. It was quite dark, so I could not see well. So I used my phone's flashlight to see what's up. Trees, just trees, and what he heard was probably some kind of small animal. Once again, I turned around and kept walking. He continued to peer back once in a while still, but this time, I noticed it was a lot more frequent. I just said to myself, just squirrels or maybe a bird, and I ignored it. Then I heard what appeared to be actual footsteps and branches breaking. This is absolutely no way a small animal could have produced a sound like that. There is absolutely no way a small animal could have produced a sound like that. Loki turned around quick, and still with his tail tucked, he began to growl and bark at a figure that I could only describe as a man in his early 50s, possibly late 40s, appear from out of the woods. He was dressed in dirty clothing, his hair was long and graying, he had one hand in his pocket, and he said to me, "Nice dog you have there, kid. What breed is he?" "He's a boxer/lab," I replied. "Oh, I love dogs. Mind if I pet him?" He wondered. The man got closer and emerged from the trees. As he got closer, I realized that he was quite tall and a bit burly. Loki instantly got bad vibes. He ran behind me and started to bark at him. Actually, I do kinda mind. My dog here doesn't like strangers. Sorry, but it's probably not best if you pet him, I quickly stated. "It's okay, really. He seems like a friendly guy. Just a little pet wouldn't harm him," the man retorted as he got closer. I felt extremely uncomfortable as he appeared to get closer and closer. I don't know why this guy couldn't take no for an answer. I mean, I usually don't allow people to pet Loki unless he comes up to them first. If he's scared of you, then I usually do not want to freak him out by letting him be pet by a stranger. This is especially the case when said stranger came from the woods behind a few trees. "I'm really sorry, man. I'm scared he'd bite you or something," I told him as I began to walk away. Like I said before, I wasn't trying to be judgmental or anything, but the dude came from the woods and was possibly the one trailing us from before. "I don't know why you won't just let me introduce myself to him," the guy replied angrily. This time, I began to speed walk. I was very uncomfortable and my flight or fight instincts began to take over. He followed us and kept muttering curses to himself. I don't know if this man was under the influence of something, but he did not let up. I won't lie, I started to get a little angry. Why can't a guy just take no for an answer? He began to match my speed, almost as if he was trying to catch up to us. Loki and I both took this as an answer to start sprinting a bit. I don't remember much of the running. It was all a blur to me. But I do remember the spine-tingling feeling of hearing his footsteps rapidly increasing behind me. For a man of his stature, he was quite fast. I also realized that his intentions may not have just been to pet my dog. No one reasonable would go that far just to pet a dog that clearly wanted nothing to do with him. I looked behind me, and he was in pursuit. Maybe about 10 feet behind me, he was chasing us. I will never forget the look in his eyes. I never had anyone look at me like that. A look of killer intent. And all for what? Just because he couldn't pet my dog? My instincts told me that he definitely had sinister intent behind that. Finally, the path led to the park exit and into the busier streets. I lived about 10 minutes away from the park, and I made sure no one was following me, and I even made sure to walk on the populated streets. And after what seemed like an eternity, we got home, but I knew for a fact that I was not gonna get a minute of sleep. From my window in the porch, I watched all night with Loki, just to see if anyone had followed us home. I also made a police report with my parents. After all, this guy seemed to have been quite suspicious, and who knows what his true intentions were. Had his target been someone who couldn't protect themselves or run away, what would he have done? I also often ask myself, what if I had worn my headphones and the sound of the music drowned the footsteps behind me? Ever since, I haven't walked Loki in that park. I've also made it a habit of mine to walk on livelier streets at night. If I could give anyone one piece of advice, even if you live in a relatively safe town, do not ever let your guard down. You never know what kind of person might be lurking in the shadows. Two nights ago, I was awoken by my dog between 11 and 3 a.m. at most. He kept near me when I got up and made a low aggressive growl facing out of my room but kept close to me. He has never done this before, and I've worked with canines for years, and this gave me a gut feeling. And then I heard it. Someone talking. In my yard, no more than 20 feet by the sound. Low mumbling or bad whispering, and I was blaring Return of the King. I need to add that I have childlike hearing at my age for context. If you speak in a one-floor home with 2 doors closed at a whisper, I can make words out. He went quiet when I opened the drawer too loud to grab my hidden .380, chambered around, and noticed a shadow passing by light outside the blurred window. Home was clear, all doors locked, nothing odd, but my dog peeled out. I held my flashlight in one hand, went his way and called him to the other side. He was gone. I guess they knew I was home and ran on foot. I went around but thought, okay, I'm good. Well, Florida continues to be Florida. The third night, my dog does this again in the same frame, waking me up, and at this rate, I just got the 12 gauge. My dog was acting far more protective, or gave me the dog body language for major threat, need the pack, can't handle alone. I froze for a moment. 2 people now? Fuck. This is not good. They must be intent to violently take whatever they could be after. It was one new guy and guy number 1. I can't risk getting a look. At this rate, they mean business, and I had to be armed to scope out a place with a ring. 60 pounds of muscle of a dog, and my grown ass with a lifetime of handling guns. In the yard around 2:30 a.m. for a second night, they knew I and my dog were home, but clearly had a goal. This time, voices were behind the home. My dog then pulled a fucking Leroy Jenkins. He gave off the most aggressive, loud bark that I have ever seen any dog do, and ran to the wall. I ran to his side and yelled, "Fuck them up, they're dead men." Now shit's clicking for me. This was planned and professionally. I checked every inch of the property with a shotgun, and my dog was worked up and spooked, but calming. I'm buying him steak for this one, and definitely a good one. I went inside and I literally kept that gun on me, chambered, and in reach of my bed. I barely slept. On the fourth day, I did a bit of looking around for misplaced or slightly moved objects or scratched out blocks. Yep, one trash can by the gate was rotated 180 degrees, with the handle facing me, not the wall as it's always been placed. Few crushed dead twigs as I went back, and the head chair was turned and moved to the right. A clearly odd thing, as that table set is symmetrical, so it's glaringly obviously out of place if you live there. The ring and my neighbors so far show nothing, but I knew these guys had to have known he left. Knew his son lives there, and the dog would eat them up and is huge, and that I had a gun, and I even announced that I was armed. Yet, came back with a backup. Then the backup dude moved shit that I didn't know, till my Marine buddy told me to check if so much as a rock was out of place. It's a way to gauge the person's awareness or presence, I guess. But whatever your goal was, let's not meet. I knew they weren't who they said they were. Always trust your gut. By U/K Faith Ford. I, a 22-year-old female, live in a brand new apartment complex on a nice side of town. My city is pretty safe in general, and this is the first time that I've lived alone, so even though it's a safe area, I took some precautions which included installing a Ring video doorbell. I have honestly never needed it in the 6 months that I've lived here, as no unexpected visitor has ever come by. Well, until last night. I was sitting at home alone with my dog working on some homework. It was nearly 8 p.m. and starting to get dark outside. At night, I have my Ring set up to alert me when a person is detected outside my door. I receive a notification of motion at my door, but I didn't think much of it. At 8 p.m., people are still walking down the hall and up the stairs and etc. About 30 seconds later, I receive several loud knocks on my door and my Ring is pushed rapidly 3 times. At this point, I'm spooked and my dog is going nuts. I open up the app to see 2 men standing outside my door. I debated internally on if I should open it or not, but then decided since it wasn't dark yet and my neighbors were home that it would be safe to do so. I slowly opened the door, just enough to put my head out. The man nearest to me says that they're with a wreath committee and complimented my wreath. He then went on to say that he was with an internet company and he and his partner were here to offer me a deal. Now, my apartment has a very strict no-tolerance policy for solicitation of any kind. We are told to immediately report that kind of activity, and there are signs posted all around stating that solicitation is prohibited by law here. I told the men that I am happy with my current service and I was not interested in switching. The man who spoke first continued to speak about the great deal they were offering, but I continued to decline. He kept saying that he lived really close to here and he'd be happy to personally set up the service. He even offered to come inside and help me get started immediately. I declined his offer once more, and he reiterated that if I changed my mind, and just to give him a call because he could be here in 5 minutes to help me out. He handed me a business card, and I tried to end the conversation again. He then tells me that he just can't walk away knowing that I could get such a good deal, and I'm saying no to it. At that point, my instincts were telling me that something was off. I decided to take a more aggressive approach, and I asked him if he was aware that my apartment has a strict no solicitation policy. He said he was aware, but that he cleared it with management. My apartment has a very small management team, and I know every single one of them. I asked who he cleared it with, and he said that he cleared it with the guys on the golf cart, Mike and Will, and that Mike was a great guy. Now, I knew it was all a lie. Our management team is only women here. There is nobody by the name of Mike or Will. In fact, only one man works here, and his name is Joe. I say, "Thanks, I'm not interested," and close the door and lock it loudly. I took closer at the business card he handed me. It had a logo and a name he gave me, but the email was not a company email. It was a Yahoo account. The phone number also did not appear when I searched it up for the company. I decided to post about my encounters in the residents-only Facebook page, and a few other women commented that they had similar interactions tonight, but that they were given different names. The strange thing was, none of the men or couples were approached. It was only women they spoke with. They talked to my upstairs neighbor and my neighbor across the hall, which were both girls, and didn't speak to either of the men that lived on the same floor as me. Everyone was given different names, and everyone was offered vastly different deals. 2 women were told that they did not have any business cards to hand down. I thought it might be worth Googling this guy's name to see if anything popped up. And sure enough, the second result was a report of an offender registry. Turns out the man who spoke at my door has 5 felonies and have served several years in jail for various charges, including trafficking a controlled substance, theft by deception, and possession of stolen property. I knew it was him because there was a photo attached to the report, and he is currently on parole until November. I'm not sure if I'm overthinking the situation because this is my first time experiencing something like this, but I know it didn't feel right. Maybe I'm just being dramatic or paranoid, but the entire thing feels more than a little bit off. I'm not sure if they were just scammers or if they were staking out places to rob, or maybe worse, and I reported it to my property manager who is investigating it today. But I am just a bit uneasy about the whole thing. If they return, I'll be calling the police for sure. As of the time of me writing this, nothing else suspicious has happened, and I am safe at the moment. I will continue to stay vigilant. So guys, please, be safe out there. My dog rescued me from a creep. Hey, so I have a story. I used to live in a fairly rough area where break-ins and bashings were pretty common. My house was pretty secure most of the time, but we've had someone try to get in and then give up. I live there with my boyfriend and our dog Angus. Angus normally is a total love bug and is friendly and affectionate. He is a mutt, but we have guessed that there is some German Shepherd and something else in there as well. As I walked down the alleyway to get home, I noticed that I didn't have my keys with me and I would need to jump the back fence. I wasn't too worried about it. I'd call out to Angus so he wouldn't bite me and things would be good. But I heard someone called out to me in the alleyway, and I ignored it. I called out to Angus and threw my bag over the fence before climbing it up myself. Angus barked happily and wagged his tail before demanding pats. I admit that my focus was on my excitable and happy dog. But then I heard a sound, and I saw a man leaping over the fence. He shouted something at me aggressively, and I saw that he had a knife in his hand. I started to back up and felt pretty vulnerable outside. My boyfriend wouldn't be home for a couple of hours. But Angus wasted no time. He growled and ran over to him barking. I was worried for him, and I tried to call him back. And the man screamed for Angus to get away, but it only encouraged him. The last thing that I remember was him leaping over the fence, while Angus was biting him on the ass. It was scary at that time, but definitely hilarious whenever I think about it now. Good boy, Angus. Please, I hope I'm being dramatic. By you/Radiant Weekend. I usually walk my dog around midnight or half past midnight. I like the fact that I'm alone and that I am allowed to take my mask off. Sometimes my mother comes with me, and sometimes my mother goes alone, or sometimes I go alone. However, it's just me most of the time. If a car drives by me, I just make sure they don't stop, and that's it. Not gonna lie, I have had scares, but it was mostly because it's dark and I am a woman. But I tell myself to calm down. Not everyone is bad, or why would they do it to me, right? Well, today, I walked my dog alone, and when I was walking the way back to my house, my dog stopped, and I thought she wanted to do something. A car drove by, and even though there was nothing especially weird about that car, I just kept an eye on it. The road is one way, and yes, it had to pass where I live, but it stopped right in front of the portal. I got a weird sensation in my stomach, and I decided not to walk on the sidewalk closest to where they were parked. I walked the opposite direction from where they were, but my dog wanted to go back home, so we turned around. Suddenly, my mom is calling me and asking where I was. She was in the other area I was in, but on the other sidewalk. She crossed the road and I saw that the car was no longer in front of my house, which for some reason didn't sit well with me. Then I calmed down because there was a similar car parked a bit behind where I had seen the other. But then my mom told me that a car that was parked in front of her house with two men inside had started driving really slowly when she came out, and the driver, looking directly at her, said, "Oh, there goes the bodyguard," and then drove away. Now, I try to not get scared because at first I understood they were talking with each other, and my mom just heard a part of their conversation, and she actually tends to overthink a lot. But then I realized that the man was looking at her, and the fact that they drove away with no reason. Maybe I'm being dramatic and just getting crazy over nothing, but he looked at my mom while saying that, and I can't stop thinking that if they knew who my mom was and why she was on the street at that time, that means that they know me. And I can only think of two situations. First, someone who lives closer, knows us, and has seen our late walking routine. And the second, someone who has been driving around here enough times to know who we are and our late walking routine. Either situation, I don't like them one bit. I just want to walk alone with my dog with no problems. The other weird thing that happened is that a few minutes after they left, a neighbor walked out and said hi to my mom and I. We said hi back, and he said bye with my name, louder than his first hi. Now, I know I am overthinking this, but I see no reason to say hi to both of us and then bye only to me. And this is a guy who's been asking me out since 2015 and always gotten a no in response. But he never stopped. This past year, he started asking for hugs and even kisses. Lucky me that I have a global situation on my part and I used it as an excuse along with saying no. At first, I didn't mind him asking me out, but I've become uncomfortable with the fact that he doesn't take no for an answer and just keeps asking and asking. Is he thinking that being that persistent is gonna get him somewhere? What really made me get wary of him is that the last time that I said no, I could see anger in his face. I was inside a lift and he took a few seconds to move. He suddenly smiled and took a step back, and I was left asking myself, what? I've known this guy for 20 years and he never looked at me that way. Also, add that I live in the worst part of my city, but in 20 years of living here, I'm used to see neighbors selling drugs, people coming to buy them, shouting at 5 a.m. But I've never felt scared till recently with this neighbor, and tonight, with whatever was that with the two men in the car. I still don't understand why he was looking at my mom while saying those things. I'm trying to tell myself that I'm exaggerating here, but I can't shake the odd feeling. A part of me wants to keep walking alone at midnight, just to see if it happens again, but then, I don't want to challenge my luck here. Weird Dog Walking Story by U/. Basic Accountant 369. This happened about 3 years ago when I was out walking my dog, and has always just bugged me as a bit weird. To make the story easier, I'm going to briefly describe my dog and the place where we live in. Our dog was a Staffy Pit Bull Cross. We rescued him from a dog shelter when he was about 8. And by this time, he already had pretty bad arthritis in his back hips and was on daily tablets for this. He also suffered from really bad anxiety caused by being abandoned by his previous owners and being in the dog shelter for such a long period of time. He was terrified of cats, and other dogs made him nervous. If he saw another dog, he would freeze, tail between his legs, silent and just staring. If the dog came over, he'd be ready to fight. One time I was walking with him in the evening, and 4 cats came out of nowhere and were hissing at him and chasing him, almost like they could smell his fear. But with people, he was the biggest sweetheart. My son was 3 when we got him, and that little lad could do no wrong in the dog's eyes. If my son was lying in his bed, he'd lie on the floor next to him. If my boy wanted to wrestle, the dog would let it happen. If my son wanted a cuddle, the dog would lie there for an hour. If we had a burglar break-in, my dog would just be happy to meet a new friend. He loved food, cuddles, and lying in the sun on the grass. And we miss him every single day now that he's gone. For where we live in a newly built housing estate on the edge of town in the UK. The site is basically one big circle with one main road going right through the middle. Off of this main road is a lot of side streets. Some are dead ends and some loop back around to the main road or connect to the other roads. There's a few grassy patches for kids and dogs and a load of footpaths and cycle paths. So on the night in question, we went out for a last walk at about 9 p.m. for a wee or a poo before bedtime. It was early spring, so dark and so cold. My street is a dead end, but connects up with other roads via some footpaths. We started walking down some of it and going roughly parallel with the main road. We hadn't made it to any of the grassy areas yet, so it was just parked cars and houses around us. About 5 minutes into the walk, we reach a crossroad. Roughly speaking, turning left would be headed towards the main road and right would take you further away. My dog goes still and quiet, and the tail goes between his legs. He's scared. So I start looking for cats hiding in the dark. I try getting him to move, but he won't. I can't see anything. Then a dog, off leash, no owner in sight, comes strutting up from the right-hand turn. It's a golden retriever. Nothing unusual about it except to see that it was clean. Its coat was clearly white gold and not muddy or wet or anything. It comes closer, right at us, and still no owner in sight. My dog doesn't like other dogs, and this one is off leash with no one in sight, so I want to get away before it kicks off. I get a treat out of my pocket and my dog ignores it, so I get 2 more treats and he reluctantly starts walking to get them. We go left towards the main road, and I'm trying to go quickly to stay ahead, but he keeps stopping to look back. The golden retriever is following us, still trotting at the same pace about 20 meters behind us. We reach the end of the road. This is a T-junction. We take the left and now we're around the corner. I have a little jog, thinking maybe we can get far enough away that the golden retriever will go elsewhere. Nope. It comes around the corner and keeps following us. My dog really wants to stop, but I keep dragging him after me. At the end of the street, we are on the main road and I turn left. Now, it's about 200 meters back to our house, pretty much just a straight line. The dog reaches the main road and here, it finally stops following us. Where we turned left, it turned right. It trotted across the main road and goes to the other side, where there is a guy who stood waiting. He just stood on the pavement doing nothing. The dog stops next to him, and the man and the dog stare at us as we walk away as quickly as we can. They're still watching up until the point we get far enough away that you can't see them anymore. That's it. Nothing bad happened or anything. I never saw that man or dog again. It was just weird how the dog was so far away, probably 400 meters, but even further down the bends and curves and corners of the road. The man and the dog were basically in completely opposite parts of the estate. Probably, the dog had escaped out of the open door and the man was out looking for him. But the guy wasn't shouting out or even running around. He was, to my eye, literally just waiting. Anyway, what do you think? Just a lost dog and an owner out looking for it? I did consider the golden retriever was a lost animal, and so I should have helped it or grabbed it. But my dog was really anxious of other dogs, and they were both big dogs, so if they started fighting, I don't think I could have broken them apart without one getting hurt. I guess it might have been a dick move, just leaving the golden retriever, but I thought it was better to avoid a confrontation. We always keep our dog on a short lead so we could control him, but dogs off leash were always our biggest fear. Run home as soon as a car drives by towards you. By you/Tamsarian. Hi, this is my first time sharing something here. I saw videos on YouTube about this subreddit, and I wanted to share a story that happened to me a few years ago during the summer after my first year of high school. It's a story about assault, but the events goes way beyond that, so I figured out that it may have its place here. And sorry in advance if there are any mistakes, because English is my second language. It was in early July of 2015. I did go to a party organized by one of my classmates who lived in a rural town. During the party, I smoked a lot and drank some snaps that I made with peers. My friends seemed to enjoy it quite a lot, so we were really wasted. At around 3 a.m., a lot of the people began to go to sleep in tents, and I didn't have one and nobody to share with me. So after some boring time, I decided to go back to my place, which was quite far, like an hour and 30 minutes of walking. I did walk for 15 minutes in the dark on an unfrequented county road with a cool wind and nice temperature. You know, that's kind of the moment where you're just chilling after a party and enjoying the walk. But a car came along. It was red, so I did see it from a certain distance despite the darkness around me. Confident like a teenager can be while being wasted, I continued to move forward. Nevertheless, the driver saw me and sped up to reach me, and within a few seconds, 2 guys got out of the red car and began to assault me. I did my best fighting back, kicking one in the head and pushing the other one in a small ditch, which was along the road. But then the first one pushed me in it too, and we continued to fight for a few minutes. At that time, I had been practicing martial arts for 3 years, but dropped when I made it to high school. With the adrenaline, I didn't feel the pain of their attacks, so I did fight back pretty well, and there was no clear winner. God, I wish I didn't enjoy it, and I wish I did run as soon as the fight began, and I wish that I wasn't that reckless, cocky, and stupid at the same time. After several minutes, another guy opened the right back door of the red car and came out. I did see him from the corner of my eye, but I was brought back to my current opponents. This guy approached and he pulled out a gun aiming at me with a strange hand, like his skin had some white stains on it. When I saw it, everything stopped around me and my ears began to be filled with ultrasounds covering the words of these guys. Next thing I know, one of the first 2 guys grabbed my arms and locked it behind my back, while the second one began to beat me up. He hit me mostly in the face because he was mad that I didn't surrender before. The third one took my bag and searched what was in it. Then after taking out the spare t-shirt and some personal stuff, he yelled and they stopped the beating. Indeed, they were still locking me out and put my head on the ground, and the third one frisked my pockets and took my phone. He asked me, "Do you have any drugs on you? Weed, cocaine?" I answered that I finished it at the party where I was before, and he told the 2 guys to let me go. While I was getting up, the guys were discussing about me and what to do next. Suddenly, The third one looked at me and asked, "So, where's this party you were talking about, Joseph?" I didn't have any identifying papers or wallet on me. It was literally impossible that he discovered my name with the stuff that he stole in my bag. I didn't even write my name on the label of my t-shirt. I already felt defeated and scared as hell, but at this moment, I really began to become a lunatic. I didn't answer because I couldn't contain my emotions about this. He asked me again, but I was terrified. I couldn't stare back at him. Even if I was a pretty sick kid at these times, I have never been in a worse situation than this. As I looked at the ground, he saw my shoes and told me, "Cool Air Max, give it to me." I didn't react again, so he approached and stooped to take it as he saw that I couldn't move a muscle. But this time, I was clearly gonna make a move. That was the moment to reverse the odds as he stooped and I waited, and then I hit him violently in the face with my knee and started to run faster than ever, dodging his mates. Unfortunately, I left my stuff behind, but I was really too scared to go back. But I did look back fearing that they may be pursuing me. But all I saw was these three guys staring at me, and the third one laughing really loudly and insulting me from where he stood. To be clear, I don't live in a country where there's no gun control. There's a lot of control, but a lot of people can get guns with trafficking. That wasn't the first time that I saw a gun. I got the opportunity to use some a few times with my grandfather, so I didn't know the consequences, and I didn't underestimate the risk. Nevertheless, the story doesn't end here awfully. After fleeing in the fields, I got back to the party, and some of the awake remaining people tried to help me. I wasn't talking or answering any questions. I did say that two guys beat me up, but I was too scared to tell about the third one because he had a gun. But above all, he knew my name. After a few traumatic hours, I called my mom with the phone of the girl who took care of me, and she went to the place of the party to take me home. I didn't tell her the truth too, even if I trust her most than everyone, because I knew that she was gonna freak out. And that wasn't a really good period since I already had bad experiences with police, and that she was already exasperated by me. She took me to the police station, and I told them the same thing, and I clearly saw some police officers laughing at me. After a week, I decided to go back to a party that was not really far from home, like a 15-minute walk. I realized that every time I heard a car, I tried to hide to avoid it. Sometimes, when a car stopped and stood in one place, I preferred to make a detour. These crazy trauma reflexes lasted 2 years. 2 years fearing that I may meet this man again. As I told earlier, I filed a complaint at the police station, but there was clearly no hope to find them. Until they called me back, and it was in September of 2017. I drove to the police station and they set me up in a room. I already got my driver's license, and that's definitely better than walking an hour and 30 minutes during the night, as you can relate now. They asked me about what happened 2 years earlier, and I did tell the same story that I told everyone, and they showed me some pictures. These were kind of mugshots. I couldn't tell if I recognized them because their faces were masked at that time. But then, I had a strange vibe with one of the pictures. One got strange white stains while thinking and trying to remember the scenes. I clearly see again the moment of the arrival of this guy, and that his hand caught my attention when he pulled out the gun. Even if I didn't tell the truth before, I wanted to know what they found to ask me to come up here, so I told them that this guy seemed familiar, and I asked if I was right. After this recognition, the police officers seemed to be a little uncomfortable. One got out of the room, and the other stood in silence. After a few seconds, he got back with a file, and without showing it, he began to leaf through it and started talking. And that moment has really chilled my blood. Ubis and Tana is suspected for the case of 2 homicides. The 2 corpses were found in a private forest by an individual. The 2 victims were already known by the law enforcement units, and their ties to Ubis and Tana makes him the prime suspect. The police officers carried out a search after obtaining the authorization of the prosecutor. Bullet cartridges and a small quantity of drugs were found, but the apartment seems to have been emptied before the visit. I couldn't believe it. This was going too far for me. I asked to see some photos from the file, saying that it would likely help them. I wasn't sure what they could show me due to the instruction secret, but they seemed to seek for any evidences that they could get. They showed me the photos of the house search, and it seemed pretty gross. Mole and stuff. It really looked like a crackhead spot. And as I was looking at the pictures, I saw something that I didn't want to see. They took a picture of the drugs that they found, and the first picture shows the hand of a police officer holding a bag filled with drugs. A blue bag. A blue Herschel bag. Yeah, that was pretty fucked up. I couldn't contain myself and told them that it was probably my bag on the picture. Those backpacks weren't common in my country, so I figured that it was worth to tell the police officers. Slapped and Almost Stabbed by u/Dungeon Keeper 420. When I was much younger, I used to go out and party almost every night. I couldn't stand staying at home, so being out of town felt good, especially with friends. We would go bar hopping, and one of the pubs that we frequented was called Poppin'. We would get wasted as the alcohol here is dirt cheap due to the island being duty-free. So imagine being teenagers and being wasted most of the time. Not a good combination, and bad things are bound to happen. I grew up on this island and I know many of the townsfolk here. It's a relatively safe place to be, since it's just a small island. You could literally leave your car doors unlocked and no one would steal your car. Hence, there's nowhere to run, and the only way out of the island is either by flight, speedboat, or a ro-ro ferry. So, back to the story. I was out one night with my buddies as usual, having some drinks at a local pub. We were having a great time listening to a live band that was playing at that time. It was crowded inside and people were drinking and dancing. Me and my friends were too. My friend's name is Steve. See, Steve and I were close, and I knew him since he was in high school, and at that time, I was in my early 20s. We were good friends, and while we were in the pub, suddenly, he called me to go outside and accompany him to go and see someone. Curiously, I followed him outside, and when I asked him, he just told me to back him up, and that the guy we were gonna meet was apparently dating Steve's younger sister. And Steve didn't like that one bit since his sister was still in high school. So, when he came, Steve warned him not to disturb his sister and to stay away from her, which I thought was fair. Then, being the hero wannabe, I butted in and started telling him the same thing, and he wasn't taking it one bit from me and got really pissed instead. He said that I was going to regret opening my mouth and then just walked off. He went back inside and I started calling friends, telling them that a fight was going to go down, as I knew that guy was going to call his friends as well. And about 15 minutes passed, and I got a call out, and this guy had brought about 15 to 20 guys, and they surrounded me and Steve. Then, this guy's uncle pulled me aside and slapped me, saying that I was a dead man. I tried to fight back, but then he did something that really shook me up. He brandished an army knife from his packed jeans, the kind that had those teeth-like texture at the back end of the blade, the kind that could literally be used to pull your guts inside out. Yeah, it was that kind of knife. And I froze. I didn't know what to do as he was holding onto my t-shirt with one hand and had a knife on the other. Immediately, I thought to myself, oh shit, I'm gonna get stabbed and probably killed tonight. So much was racing through my mind and I couldn't think. According to Steve, most of these guys had weapons on them. One of them even broke beer bottles and was holding up the sharp broken glass, ready to hurt us. But then out of nowhere, my brother-in-law came screaming, saying that he was a cop and that backup was coming, and if they didn't settle it there and then. My brother-in-law is a big guy and stands at almost 6 feet tall, so I knew that they would believe that he was a cop and started to settle down. The guy that was dating Steve's sister still wasn't satisfied and wanted to fight me one-on-one. At first I denied him, but after he kept asking, I just said yes. Luckily, he didn't go through with it and just settled with a handshake. He told me not to go after his uncle and wanted to really settle. I agreed since this was such a small island and you would meet the same people all the time. I went home after that as I had had enough for the night, and that the incident shook the alcohol out of me and definitely sobered me up. I still saw that guy and his knife-wielding uncle a couple more times when I was out in town, but we just nodded to each other and never had problems with one another ever since. So that's my story of the time that I almost got stabbed and probably killed by some random guy's uncle just for butting in their conversation, which was none of my business in the first place. And that's the reason why I no longer favor going out to drink till you can't think straight. It's better to stick to herbs instead and just chill at home. The Man in the Van by u/Toxixa. This happened a few months ago to my friends and I. We are university students in Cape Town, South Africa. So, when we aren't trying to just get through the semester, we like to let our habits get the better of us and go out for drinks. On this night, we had just finished what felt like an extra long day at university and decided to head to a bar about 5 minutes from campus for some much-needed stress relief. The evening was going well, although a bit slow. It was enjoyable, with everyone having a drink and getting a bit restless. So, me being on the more outgoing ones in the group, I suggested that we head to a pool bar not far from where we were. Everyone agrees and we get our stuff to go. We all jump in my car and we get to the bar, but being a Thursday night, parking was scarce. I finally managed to find a spot about a block away from the bar, but it was in a secluded side street. I should also mention that this bar is in one of the sketchier parts of town, but is normally quite safe due to the amount of nightlife associated with being so close to a university. We walked to a bar and no one really felt uneasy, nor did anything happen to make us feel that way, which was quite surprising. After a few hours of some pool and just relaxing, we decided that it was time to grab dinner before any of the restaurants close, as being in South Africa means that most restaurants, even the fast food shops, close early at around 7 to 8 p.m. to comply with a curfew. We decided to stop at the pizza place below the bar to grab some food before we all decided what the plan for the end of the night was. So, because our group was so large and the pizza place being so small, we decided to have those getting food go inside while the others who didn't would wait outside on the street. This was an easy decision as the pizza place had a massive open window with built-on counters so we could still all talk to each other. Now, this is where things started getting a little weird. While we were waiting for our friends inside the pizza place to come out, this massive white van pulls up past us and stops. The driver wasn't an intimidating-looking dude. He was skinny, looked to be about average height with shoulder-long blonde hair. A pretty standard-looking dude for the kind of area we were in. He calls me and asks if I think that his van could fit in the parking spot just behind him. For perspective, this parking spot could probably fit like a small hatchback, maybe. This dude is driving a full long-size panel van, and this makes me kind of uneasy, as I thought that as a driver of a car, you should know where your car can definitely not fit, and this was one of them. I explained to him that I didn't think it was even worth attempting. He responds telling me that he has faith in his ability and that I should come stand behind the van and direct him in. This gives me major red flags, and after a few back and forth, he just pulls the emergency brake up and sits and stares at my friends and I for what felt like eternity. He then thanked us and drove off. This sparks my friends to come out of the pizza place as they just saw what happened and were very confused. We all are kind of weirded out but think nothing of it, and everyone eats their pizza, and we try to decide what the plan is for the last hour or two before our curfew cuts things short. Most of us decide that this is where the night is gonna end, as we're all kind of weirded out by the guy in the van. A few others decided they were going to stay and just Uber home a little later in the evening. With our group number cut down to 4, we decided to walk back to the car and just head home. When we left the pizza place, a homeless person called us and was insisting we had nothing to worry about with the guy in the van, which didn't help with anyone's nerves. We then decided to head to the car, but as soon as we turned the corner to approach the side of the street where the car was parked, we see the van man again. This time, not quite as happy as he seemed in his encounter earlier. I made a cheeky comment about him finally finding a parking spot that he could fit in while we were walking past each other, and he stared at my friends and I, not breaking eye contact even when we passed him. I turned around to see if he was still looking. He was, but as we turned the corner of the side street with a car, I saw it, and my heart sank. The van horribly parked half on and half off the sidewalk, back door slightly open. And upon seeing this, I turn around and see Van Man is now walking towards us. But he said something that confused me at first, but immediately made sense after. He said, "Hey, please, just watch my car." Which confused me. But when he said that, 4 men sat up from leaning on the wall next to it and began following us. My friends and I were slightly ahead of them, so we were trying to discuss the game plan. Because it was obvious, if we did nothing, something horrible was going to happen. My friends start walking faster, and I remain at the same speed, frantically searching my pockets for my car keys. All the while, shouting at my friends to wait up and asking what the rush was. All in hopes that the guy behind us, who were gaining on us, were oblivious to us knowing that they had sinister intentions. And as soon as the car came into view, we booked it, jumped in and drove away, but we were only seconds from not being that lucky. After locking the car doors, I saw the men surrounding the car. I managed to get us out, and looking back in the mirror, I saw a 5th man by the van at the bottom of the street. I still have no idea what their intentions were that night, if it was to rob us or just beat us up, or worse. I don't really like to think about how lucky we were that night. I ask that when you're out, no matter how innocent an interaction with someone can seem, always pay attention to the little things. So, to the man in the van my friends and I saw that night, can we please not meet again? The Australian House by you/Lucky G Boy. Hello everyone, my name is Luke and I'm French. I'm 26 years old and I currently live in Australia since May of 2019. I met my girlfriend Mina, who is Japanese origin, 1 month after my arrival in Australia on a strawberry farm where we both work. We worked over there for several months until the health crisis hit the planet. So, no more work on the farm. We have to find something else. At that time, we had 2 choices: to go back home and we split up, or stick together and try to get through this event on our own. And spoiler, we chose the second solution. We then decided to leave our seasonal job in the countryside to go into town trying to find a new job. Bingo! Good news for me. An employer has agreed to hire me to work on a local Australian football team. This employer will be named Kathy. Kathy explains to me that I can work for the football team, but that currently, because of the health crisis, a containment will be mandatory, even if at this time, Australia is rather spared compared to Europe. Anyway, I'm hired, but I'm gonna have to wait until the lockdown passes and the football season resumes. So I explain that it tempts me, but it will be intense for Mina and me to remain unemployed during the confinement because we have to pay rent and food and etc. You should know that Kathy has a heart as big as Australia. Sensitive to our situation, she explains that she has a solution for us. She has a holiday home several kilometers from Brisbane that belonged to her father, who is now in a retirement home where we could stay for free while confinement is in progress. At this time, I do not believe it too much. I tell myself that there is something fishy, but in front of the situation, I agree, because this is the best solution for us. We accepted this and moved into the house a few days later. Animal Crossing, Splatoon, MK, we enjoyed playing video games during this lockdown. Everything is going well. We feel a little lonely because this house is isolated in the countryside. But apart from that, we are well. We have a garden, etc., and all of this for free. I also point out that this house is like in the middle of nowhere. I just have a neighbor named John who takes care of horses, and I've been friends with him, and that's it. In this house, there is a main entrance door with a large fuzzy glass, so you can distinguish things through, and there is another wooden door behind the house that overlooks a veranda connected to the house. This house is a single story, so there are no floors, and to finish, no curtains at the window except in the bedroom. The context is given, and the story begins now. 3 or 4 weeks after I moved in, Kathy calls me with good news. I can go to work. First day of work, everything goes smoothly. I like what I do and very good atmosphere. The only problem is, we're still in Kathy's father's house, which is several miles from Brisbane, and I don't have a car. So I have an hour and a few trains to go and the same one to come back. But like I said before, I have nothing to complain about. For the record, Mina was still looking for work. She wasn't as lucky as I was, so she was mostly at home while I'm working. Second day of work. Always at the top, 5 p.m. I'm about to finish my job when I get a call from Mina. She whispers, with the voice trembling. First second, I feel something's wrong. She was quiet playing Animal Crossing on the couch when suddenly, she saw a silhouette through the blurred window of the main entrance door. Too small and too wide for me, or even John, and she understands it very quickly. She stares at this figure that is now motionless facing the front door. It is at that moment when she tries to get up to gently walk away from the door that this guy begins to frantically knock on the door. Her heart is racing. She doesn't know what to do. She tries to be as discreet as possible so this guy thinks that no one is there or will open it to him. She finally decides to hide in the wardrobe of the room because it is the only room where we cannot see what is happening from the outside. Snuggling between the hangers of our clothes and praying for him to let go, she suddenly remembers that there is a second door behind the house that is open, and she doesn't know if it's locked or not. Courageous, she decides to rush through the house to reach this door, and then during her run, she sees this guy sneaking past one of the windows of the kitchen. The conclusion? He goes around to check if there is a door at the back of the house. Panicked, but already in her race, she decides to go to the end and try everything for the hole. She must close this door before he tries to open it. It is finally when she presses the latch that she hears the individual trying to push the door. Completely frightened, she goes back to hiding in this wardrobe, and that's when she calls me. As I said earlier, I struggled a little to understand what she was saying to me on the phone because her voice trembled, but I immediately tried to calm her down so that I could have a clear information about what was going on. And after a minute, I asked her to focus on her breathing and listen to me. She calmly describes to me what happened, and my brain switches modes. I think, I have to go home as soon as possible while making sure that she is the least in danger. I ask her to stay in that closet and call the police and call me right back away until I get home. Finally, she decided to stay on the phone with me, which is not the best solution, I admit. She should have called the police, but I was in a state of total stress, and the fact that having her on the phone and continuous reassured me. I order an Uber, who must have found me super weird. Besides, I kept asking him to go faster, even to pay more. After a few minutes that I am in my Uber, and always with Mina on the phone, she explains to me that she can't hear anything anymore. No one knocking on the door, or no one around the house. I don't advise her to move, but finally, she motivates herself to take a look out of the wardrobe, to finally a few minutes later confirming to me that the silhouette is no longer visible behind the door, and that no one seems to be around the house. I'm in front of my house now, and I go to meet Mina and give her a big hug by explaining that I am here and that she has nothing to fear. 6 p.m. It's night at this time of year in Australia. I check the locks and try to pass the ideas by playing a game and watching anime. Big mistake. In my relief to rush to find out without problem, I have omitted a detail of the greatest importance. To check around the damn house. Why did I not check around the house? Now it's time for bed. 1 a.m. and the neighbor's horses wake me up and I hear the hooves. Mina, still not really asleep, asks me what is this noise, and I answer that it's the neighbor's horses. 3 a.m. I hear 3 booms. Someone knocks frantically at the door, and from behind this, shot. But like super strong, like he's halfway to breaking down the door. I can tell you that I discovered what adrenaline was at that time. I'm sure it's the same guy, and he's been trying to get into this house all along. Mina screams, and I start to tremble everywhere. I have this feeling of being paralyzed, but still having so much energy to spend. It's very strange. I get up from bed in order to barricade the back door and then call the cops. It is at this moment when I leave the room that I hear a deaf and metallic noise. Damn, he opened the damn back door. He's on the porch. So, there is only one last door with a poor wooden hole under the small space at the bottom of the door that separates us. And he's still determined to come inside. For me, and at this moment, it is sure he will enter. Shitty reflex, don't do that. This is a bad idea. I'm not much of a fighter, but with no choice, I get the biggest kitchen knife I have, and I place myself in an angle that I have the best chance of catching by surprise when he enters. And I'm willing to use that knife to defend us, to defend Mina, who is paralyzed in bed. I'm so scared, but at the same time, so much confidence it's really very, very strange. When suddenly, in the midst of her millions of thoughts, Mina screams, "Stop! Call the police!" I look at her. She throws my phone at me, and I think that instead of waiting without doing anything, maximizing my chances of staying safe while waiting for her behind the door, is a good idea. So, always in the same position, ready to defend myself, I call the police. The phone call must have lasted 40 seconds. The policeman on the phone understood directly that it was serious. He asked me the address and said that they were on their way. And at this moment, I find myself a little more relieved while staying on the lookout. This is where the individual starts mumbling incomprehensible stuff, which does not reassure me because to the noise that it makes, I tell myself that it is either a drunk or drugged guy or a mental patient. He must have figured out that I call the cops, but he's still touching the handle and pushing the door. 3:10. I have never been happier to see flashing lights. The cops are here, 4 cops and 1 police dog. When I see them approaching the house, I hear noises behind the door. The individual seems to get scared and gives up. I hear the dog barking, the policeman screaming, and a man moaning. It was over. They neutralized the individual and get him into the car. One of the police officers remained to talk to us and take our side of the story and find out whether we wanted to file a complaint or not. He told us that there was a chance that this man was a rehab patient who'd run away. He also told us that he was not sure of anything at that time and that they will have to verify his identity. But eventually, we never heard from this or the police. There you go. Australia is a great place. I'm kidding. Despite that, we have wonderful moments here and nothing similar happened then. It's already way too long, so I'm done here, hoping that this moment of intense life captivated you. Peace, Luke and Mina. Time I Almost Got Kidnapped or Murdered by U/Hiccups Capone. This happened when I was in high school, which was a long time ago. My mom just recently found the paperwork about it when she cleaned out her office upon retiring from the police department. I remember being upset and scared when it happened, but reading the details as an adult, it sounded even worse than I remembered. I was female and 17, working at a flower and gift shop. It's nighttime and a man comes in, short, overweight, balding, around 40s, and creepy. He tells me about how he needs an apology gift for his girlfriend. So, I offer a bouquet. Obviously, it's a flower shop. He says she doesn't like flowers because they die. This was the first weird thing, as he came into a flower shop. Then, he goes into detail about how he hit her and asked me if I think he was right to do so. This was long ago, so I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, "Well, not if you want her to continue being your girlfriend." He then tells me what a great job I'm doing and asks when I get off work. I dodge answering and he leaves. Nothing for 6 months. Then right before Valentine's Day, he walks in the door 1 minute before close. It was dark, and from the outside, it looked like I was working alone, as my co-worker, who was a female and 40 years old, was in the bathroom. Instinctively, it felt like a predator had just entered the room. You know when something isn't right and everything felt not right. I then notice he has a tarnished revolver tucked into the front of his windbreaker, which is halfway unzipped. It was obvious he wanted it seen. I quickly scrambled a note to my coworker and said, "He has a gun," and handed it to her when she came out of the bathroom. She calmly walked to the phone and looked at me, wordlessly asking if she should call the cops. I shook my head no, as I felt like it would escalate the situation. God forbid he heard the police coming and took us hostage or something. I was just going to try and act as calm as normal as I could, and hopefully not tip the situation into something more dangerous. He spends 15 minutes wandering around what was fairly a small shop. In retrospect, he was probably waiting to see if my co-worker would leave, as it was now well past closing. Finally, he places an order for pickup on Valentine's Day, which gives me his name and info for the police report that I'm sure as hell about to file. He buys a card and pulls out a wad of $100 bills, which he slowly thumbs through, as if looking for the right one which to pay for his $40 order. I ask him if he wants a bag, as it wouldn't be very inconspicuous if he just showed up at home with a Valentine's card. He replies, "No, I don't feel like being inconspicuous tonight." which seemed like an obvious reference to the gun hanging out his coat. He leaves, and we quickly lock the door and watch him sit in his truck outside. We are not about to exit the shop until he was gone. Finally, he pulls out of his parking spot and moves to another spot further away and continues to just sit there. I don't know how long we waited, but he finally left. I called my mom crying. She called the police, who came to the shop the next day to take a report. I told my best friend at that time what happened, and she told her mother. Her mother happened to work with the man and informed security at her job. She said he was very weird, creepy, and liked to talk about weapons a lot. Security at his job pulled him into the office and questioned him about it. He claimed it was a glove in his pocket, not a revolver. The police were pissed that his company made contact with him about it before they did, and he successfully dodged the cops' multiple calls and visits to his apartment. My mom, much to my teen fury at that time, made me quit my job, which was devastating as I loved it there. In retrospect, totally the right call. Dude came in on Valentine's Day and picked up his order, and I never saw him again. Maybe escaped a serial killer last night by Jenny J23. So, I live in Atlanta, and right now, we are having a moment. About a month ago, a woman walking her dog in or near Atlanta Central Park was stabbed and mutilated along with her pit bull. The brutality shocked the city to its core and has everyone on edge. Add to that, another young woman was followed home from a gas station after leaving work as a bartender and was kidnapped, then murdered. This means we have a whole bunch of scared women in the city, too busy to hate. Anyway, I work very close to the park where the woman and her dog were killed, and I have been extra careful since it happened. But last night, I was working alone and I had scheduled a new client for a 5 p.m. appointment, thinking that I'd be done by 7 or 7:15 at the latest. However, she needed some extra work done, so it was after 8:30 by that time, and I walked her outside to her car. We stood talking in the parking lot for a couple of minutes before she got into her car. Here, I should add that my parking lot is small and fairly secluded because of a large hedgerow and a retaining wall. After I made sure that she was safely in her car, I went back into the salon and locked the door behind me with the intention of cleaning and locking up. I was inside for less than 10 seconds before I turned around and saw a man pulling on the door. There had been no one in the parking lot that I could see, and there were no other cars than mine and my client. This guy appeared from nowhere. As I said, I am already on edge, so I stood there for a second, not sure what to do. And he stood there staring at me with his hands on the door handle. Finally, I walked up to the door. It's a glass door, so I could see him and he could see me. And I said, "What's up?" I could see that he was surprised that I didn't just unlock and open the door. And he stuttered a couple times before pointing at the hair product wall and saying, I wanted to buy some of that makeup over there." Here I noticed, number 1, he's got a pretty good black eye. And number 2, he's wearing a fairly large surgical mask outside and alone, which made me think he was trying to hide his identity. I told him, "That's not makeup. That's hair products because this is a hair salon and we're closed." Then I turned out all the lights at the front of the salon and walked towards the back wall to hit those lights as well. Once I had all the lights out, I could see him, but he could not see me. So I watched him because I didn't want to go right out after that. He ended up pacing back and forth by the front door for a couple of minutes, and then he walked to the upper part of the parking lot above the retaining wall and stood half behind a tree and bush. He would stare at the salon door, then crouch down, then walk away all nonchalant, then come back to his hiding spot and stare at the door again. After watching him do this about 3 times, I decided on the next time he walked away, I was going to make a run for my car. As soon as he turned his back and started walking towards the direction of the park, I ran out. I locked the door and sprinted the 20 feet to my car in a full-on panic. Thank God for keyless entry. I had no idea what he was up to, or if he really was a serial killer. Probably not, probably just trying to rob me. But what I do know is that he definitely saw me in the parking lot talking to my client, and I did not see him. I also know that if I had not locked the door, I would have had a much different night. There is no question in my mind that he was going to harm me in some way. As a side note, lots of people have asked if maybe he was homeless. I absolutely do not think so. He was well dressed, his head was big, and while he definitely scared the crap out of me, he did not give off the desperate vibe of a lot of the homeless, mentally ill, or addicted people that I've encountered in the past. Those people don't scare me really. Mostly, I feel sad for them and try to help in some way. But this guy had every alarm in my body screaming at full volume. Be warned, if you are coming to the A right now, maybe don't. Almost Kidnapped as a Kid by username is Kraken. This happened to me when I was 7 years old. I come from a middle-class family in a developing country and went to school around 6 kilometers from my home, usually in the school bus. One day, the school bus broke down while I was at school, not very unusual, but they couldn't find an alternative, so they called the parents asking them to pick the kids up after school, usually at 4 p.m. My dad was at work and couldn't come, and my mom didn't have any means to come pick me up. So, I told them that I'll walk to my grandma's place, which is around 1 kilometer away from school. My dad was reluctant at first, but he agreed and told me to call him as soon as I get there. This was a busy part of town and it's late afternoon, so there's enough traffic and people on the street, so it was an easy decision. And as I was walking alone, a random car slows down. The driver waves at me to stop and parks his car on the side of the road. He was dressed decently, and owning a car was rare back then, and he looked like a kind person too. He approaches me and starts speaking to me. He says he knows that the bus broke down and my dad sent him to pick me up. He knew my name, my parents' name, and the fact that I was going to my grandmother's place. He said it's no trouble for him and I can get on in the car and he's heading in that direction anyway. At this point, something didn't sit right, and I told him that I'd rather walk back and he's welcome to walk with me leaving his car there. He was visibly upset and started insisting. That's when people on the street started looking at us because I was backing away from him, and I was dressed in my school uniform, mind you. He swears something under his breath and boards in his car and goes away. I reached my grandparents' house, called my dad, and asked him who was the person he sent. He started freaking out, leaves work and gets home immediately. I described the man and nobody knows him. We reached out to the school to see if they informed anyone outside that the bus broke down. And we still don't know who that person was. I can't imagine what would have happened if I got into that car. Kidnapping for ransom was common in the area, and I'm very glad that my parents constantly told me to be very wary of strangers. Whoever that man was and whatever his intentions were, let's not meet again. This happened today. I am a mom to 2 young boys while attending online classes. My husband works nights, so any errands that I need to run during the day, my boys come with me. Today's errands included me running to my school's library for some books. My school has multiple locations and the closest one to me, unfortunately, is the one located in the sketchiest area. I figured it would be fine, since it's a college campus. I pulled up, loaded my boys in a stroller, and headed inside. As soon as I went in, I noticed the first floor was mostly a resource type area and didn't see an elevator to the other floors, and going up a lot of stairs with a stroller is a near impossible task. I didn't want to give up, so I started just strolling to see if there was anything that I could use. I immediately noticed a woman at an information desk looking around, if not right at me. It weirded me out a bit because there were maybe a total of 3 other people aside from the very few workers. This woman appeared to be in her late 30s, while I am in my mid-20s with 2 young children. I browsed the aisles and this woman moved to an information desk closer to me. I decided to ask for help, so I make my way to the same desk to wait my turn. This woman turns and just stares at me for a solid 5 seconds. I was waiting for a smile or an awkward small talk, but it never came. Her phone camera was also pointed at me, so I started browsing again because I was uncomfortable. She kept looking at me and her phone was following me. I went to hide behind bookshelves for a bit and then made my way to the middle of the library. The woman finished at the desk, turned right towards me with her phone pointed at me, and is walking straight towards me staring daggers. I was extremely freaked out and confused. She walked right by and made her way to the elevator, which was nowhere near me. I am not confrontational at all, which I know I need to work on, but I built up the courage to talk to the same librarian she had, and I told them that I thought she was staring at me, maybe recording me, and it made me very uncomfortable. They told me they couldn't see because the monitor was so big, but also she was looking up stuff on her phone, totally brushing it off. I ended up leaving and constantly checking over my shoulder. I know this isn't super terrifying, but for someone with anxiety, it was pretty scary, also having 2 young kids with me. I would love to hear if anyone has any ideas what was going on. I heard her asking for some religious book. Also, the town itself is known for drugs, and I can't imagine someone actively seeking a young mom or kids would be at a college campus library on a Wednesday morning. Woke up to a stranger in my room by U/Kodak Panther. I went to college in a historic mid-sized city in Florida, and at that time lived in a duplex downtown, maybe 3 blocks from campus. The city is known to be pretty safe, and I lived in a pretty decent area with large historic homes near me. This all happened around 3 years ago. A little backstory that will become relevant. The duplex that I lived in had a front door that locked, and then both the upstairs and downstairs units had their own locking door. I lived downstairs and had 2 roommates, but this specific night, only one of my roommates was home. We knew the girls that lived upstairs but only really spoke to them in passing. When they moved in, we emphasized how important it was to us for them to keep the main front door locked, and they did a good job of doing so. So me and my roommate are in for the night, and knowing that the front door is locked, we smoked a few joints. At some point, we hear a knock at the front door and quickly realize the girls upstairs had ordered a pizza. And later on, it becomes evident that they never locked the front door after receiving their pizza. So we finally go to sleep in our own rooms, and since I had a queen bed, I would often sleep with my phone and laptop next to me in my bed. A couple of hours after I fell asleep, I woke up to a man standing over my bed. As soon as I realized that I'm not dreaming, I noticed that he is quickly moving my phone and computer off of my bed and moving my comforter, trying to get into my bed. I start to ask him who he is, what's he doing here, and just generally confused as I was still slightly high from before I went to sleep. And the only thing he said to me multiple times was that he was just trying to get in bed. At this point, I began to panic, as my mind obviously goes to the worst. I was hoping that maybe my roommate had invited some random Tinder guy over and that he had gone to the wrong room. But the more I questioned him, all he had to say was, "I'm just trying to get in the bed." I own pepper spray and a stun gun, but I had accidentally left them on a shelf that the guy was standing in front of, so there was no way that I would be able to grab them without escalating the situation. Realizing that I need to do something quickly, I blurted, "There are 5 people who live in this house, and if you don't get the fuck out now, I will scream and they will all be here within seconds." Luckily, that was all it took to scare him off. I don't know if he had brought something with him or if he stole something from me, but I saw him grab something in the dark and run out of my room. And as soon as he left my room, I shut the door and locked it, and I tried to find my phone, but I couldn't find it anywhere. But then quickly realized that between my room and the front door is the room of my friend that was home. As scared as I was terrified that the guy had maybe gone into her room. So I grabbed my stun gun and a pocket knife, counted to 3, and ripped open my door. I ran into my roommate's room and she was fast asleep, and there was no evidence of the guy. I told her what happened, and she asked me if I was sure I wasn't dreaming. I began to question myself until I walked out of her room and saw that our front door was wide open. I went to my room to search for my phone, and finally, I find it hidden under a pile of clothes across the room from where I had left it. That sent a chill up my spine, as I immediately knew for a fact someone had been in my house and my room while I was sleeping, and long enough to hide my phone, which only worsened my suspicions of his intentions. I ran back to my roommate's room, who at that point believed me, barricaded ourselves in the room and called 911. Within minutes, there were police cars swarming our street and yard, and they yelled for us to quickly leave the residence and run towards them. At least a dozen police officers came running in and searched every inch of our apartment, and woke up the girls upstairs and searched their apartment to ensure that the man had left. The officers then had me write a statement, and I gave them a description of the man, and to this day, I've never heard a single thing about the case. I feel incredibly lucky with the outcome of the situation, but the thought of his intentions terrifies me. And additionally, the fact that he was never caught scares me, as I would hate for anyone to have to go through the pure fear that I did. I will add, there is a chance that he was on drugs or mentally ill and had no bad intentions. However, because he was never caught, I will never know, and my mind will always assume the worst. Beat Up by a Gang by username is Kraken. This happened in late 2000s when I was 12 years old. I grew up and lived in a developing nation, so many of the folks who read regularly here might not completely understand or relate to the circumstances in the incident, but I'll try my best to give any background necessary. I was never given permission by my parents to stay out after 7 p.m. for any reason, regardless of the requirement. A movie that ends at 6:30 p.m. and I was dropped home by my friend's parents? No. Study at my neighbor's house past 7 p.m.? No. So I was naturally very excited when I got permission to go watch a late-night movie with all my cousins and stayed the night at my grandmother's place. There were 6 of us together, 5 males and 1 female cousin. I was the youngest, the rest were all adults mid-20s. The movie finishes at 2 a.m. and we were asked to go straight from the movie theater to home, which was nearby. I was more excited to see the city late at night more than watching the new movie that was a big hit. We all went in 3 motorcycles to the theater and decided that once the movie was over, we would go to a cafe that was open 24/7 to have some ice cream. This was the only place that was still open and was relatively far away from my grandparents' house. I can't tell you how excited all of us were because this was a new place that opened up in my city and was very popular. My friends used to brag about how many times they visited the place and how beautiful the view of the city lake is in the middle of the night. And once the movie was over, we come outside. Except for the crowd from the theater, the roads were completely deserted and not a soul in sight. Only the streetlights lit up the roads filled with potholes and nothing. Not even the medical stores were open. My female cousin had extremely strict parents, so she declined to come and said she has to be home because her parents were waiting for her to get back. We all tried to convince her to come with us. We're 6 of us after all, but to no end. She was adamant that she had to be home, and we eventually decided to let her go. There were now 4 of us on 2 motorcycles and started riding towards the cafe. I was the pillion with my brother riding, and I noticed that 1 motorcycle was following us. It was easy as they were the only other people on the road. I told my brother immediately, and he said that they were probably going to the same place and just to ignore it. A little further, another motorcycle asked my cousin to stop and pretended to ask for directions. They stopped thinking these guys were lost and started giving them directions. And while we were talking to the guys asking for directions, 2 more motorcycles show up and surround us. Somehow, there were 8 of them suddenly. At this point, we realized that this was an ambush, but it was already too late. One of the guys pushed my cousin from the motorcycle onto the ground and started hitting him. The rest of us were trying to defend him. And once the fighting stopped, One of my cousins was bleeding all over. Then they started us to call our female cousin and tell her to come back. They had been following us from the theater. They said to tell her that they just need to talk to her. So we had to ask her to come back and that he needs to see her. At first we pretended that we had no women with us. We don't know what he's talking about. He told us that he will kill us all if we don't ask her to come meet us. The roads were abandoned and the occasional car that goes on the road just passed by without slowing down. Most likely the people in the car were afraid of getting involved. The guys were clearly having fun, laughing while they punched us and kicked us. With no help in sight, one of my cousins punches one of the guys and yells, "Run!" And instinctively, we all run in different directions, abandoning our motorcycles on the street. They start chasing us on foot at first. They went back, got on their motorcycles, and then chased us through the streets. I didn't have a mobile phone with me, and I was unfamiliar with the area, so I ran randomly looking for a hiding place. I jumped a wall into a random person's house while the motorcycles drove by on the road looking for us. I don't know where the rest of my cousins were, especially the one who was bleeding badly. The house I jumped into was home to a huge dog who started barking at me, waking up the owners. They obviously assumed that I was there to rob them, but having one look at a 12-year-old boy in tears and clearly shaken, they asked me what happened. I explained everything and I told them that I had no idea where my brothers were, and they gave me a phone and I called up the police, who said that they will dispatch a patrol car and that we can expect it in 2 hours. I had all my brothers' numbers memorized, but I didn't want to call them as I was afraid that they might be hiding and a ringing cell might give it away. I thanked the kind people who offered to host me until the morning, but I had to get to my grandmother's place to find out if my cousins had made it back. I sneaked through the streets and found my grandparents' house. 2 of my cousins made it back, but my brother was still out there. Finally, he calls us and tells us that he is hiding and he will come back once the sun comes out and that there's a general crowd outside. Until dawn, the motorcycles kept passing by our house and we were afraid that they followed one of us home. And at dawn, my brother gets back and I was the only one uninjured. One of my cousins got stitches on his face and another one broke his ribs, and my brother had a hairline fracture. We all ran through the night and suddenly, all the strict imposition by our parents made sense to us. My brother called the cops too and no one showed up ever. There was no support from anyone, and I can't imagine what would have happened if my female cousin was with us. We never got a call back from the cops to ask us if we were fine, and I can't begin to imagine what would have happened if they caught one of us. Needless to say, we never went out anywhere late at night for a long time. And to the people who ambushed us and beat us up for fun, let's not meet again. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.